The Freelander name carries a specific kind of nostalgia for anyone who followed the SUV market through the late 90s and into the 2000s. It was Land Rover's entry point, smaller, more accessible, and aimed at buyers who wanted the badge and some genuine capability without committing to the size and cost of a Defender or Discovery. Land Rover eventually retired it, and for a while the nameplate simply sat there, belonging to a past era. What's happened to it now is something considerably stranger and more interesting than a straightforward revival. The Freelander 8 isn't a new Land Rover. It isn't even made by Land Rover in any conventional sense. It's the first product of a standalone Freelander brand, born from a joint venture between Jaguar Land Rover and Chery, and it's a full-size electric SUV that has essentially nothing in common with the compact vehicle whose name it carries, except, perhaps, a certain design attitude and the calculated commercial logic of attaching a recognized name to something entirely new. That decision to separate the Freelander identity from the Land Rover lineup deserves some unpacking, because it's not an obvious one. Land Rover is a premium brand with a carefully managed image, and there are real risks in allowing a nameplate associated with it to operate in a different segment with a different ownership structure. The way the joint venture has handled this is by creating genuine distance. Freelander as its own mark, operating independently, focused on new energy vehicles, with Chery providing the platform technology and manufacturing infrastructure, while Jaguar Land Rover contributes design direction and heritage credibility. Whether that arrangement produces something that feels coherent to buyers is one of the more interesting questions hanging over the project, but the structure at least makes logical sense. It lets JLR participate in the electrified Chinese market without cannibalizing or diluting the Land Rover brand directly, and it gives Chery access to design and heritage associations that their own nameplates don't yet carry. The car itself is not what the original Freelander's name would lead you to expect. At approximately 5.1 meters in length, the Freelander 8 is a large SUV, larger in fact than a Land Rover Defender 110, which is itself not a small vehicle. The decision to go this big is clearly deliberate and clearly market-driven. In China, where the vehicle will launch first, large SUVs with 3-row seating configurations are a genuinely strong segment, and buyers shopping in that space have specific expectations around interior room, presence on the road, and the sense that the vehicle commands attention. The Freelander 8 is sized to meet all of those expectations, with interior configurations running to 6 or 7 seats depending on the specific market and variant. For anyone who remembers squeezing into the back of an original Freelander, the scale of what's being sold under the same name is almost absurd. But that's rather the point. This isn't a continuation, it's a reinvention using a familiar word as a commercial anchor. The exterior design is one of the more credible parts of the package. The boxy, upright proportions are very much in line with where premium SUV design has been trending. The Defender's influence on the broader segment has been considerable, and squared-off silhouettes with strong shoulders and vertical glasshouse proportions are appearing everywhere. The Freelander 8 works within that language, while incorporating specific details that reference the original model's 3-door design. The rear pillar treatment and the squared lighting signatures are the most direct of these callbacks, and they're handled with enough subtlety that they read as genuine homage, rather than forced nostalgia. The closed-off front end is the clear signal that this is an electric vehicle. There's no grille in the traditional sense, just a clean, sealed surface with integrated branding, and it sits naturally within the overall design, rather than feeling like an afterthought. On the roof, there's a LiDAR unit, which tells you quite a bit about where the technology ambitions of this vehicle sit. Roof-mounted LiDAR is associated with the more serious end of driver assistance development. It's hardware that supports the kind of semi-autonomous capability that's become a genuine competitive differentiator in the Chinese market, where buyers have shown a strong appetite for advanced driver assistance features, and where several domestic brands have made these systems a central part of their value proposition. Including it on the Freelander 8 puts the vehicle in that conversation, and signals that the joint venture isn't trying to compete purely on brand heritage and design. They want to be taken seriously on technology grounds as well. The powertrain strategy is notably flexible. Fully electric, plug-in hybrid, and range-extending electric configurations are all planned, which reflects a realistic assessment of the markets this vehicle needs to work in. Not every buyer shopping in the large SUV segment is ready to go fully electric, and not every market has the charging infrastructure that makes a pure EV practical for all use cases. By offering multiple powertrain options on a shared platform, the Freelander 8 can be positioned appropriately for different regions and different buyer profiles without requiring entirely separate vehicle development programs. The 800-volt electrical architecture underpinning the platform is the technical detail worth highlighting here. It enables significantly faster charging than the 400-volt systems that are still common in this segment, which is a meaningful real-world advantage and one that will become increasingly important as charging infrastructure continues to develop globally. The launch sequence is focused on China first, which is both the most logical approach and the most revealing thing about the project's priorities. China is where the joint venture's production infrastructure is located, where Chery's market relationships are strongest, and where demand for large electrified SUVs is currently most concentrated. Getting the vehicle established there before expanding internationally also allows the brand to build a track record and address any early product issues before facing the more demanding scrutiny of Western markets. There's a note in the launch planning that at least one major market will be excluded from the initial rollout, which is an interesting detail and one that likely reflects a combination of regulatory timing, right-hand versus left-hand drive considerations, and a deliberate decision not to overextend the launch. The broader context for all of this is an automotive industry that's becoming increasingly comfortable with partnerships between Western heritage brands and Chinese manufacturing capability. It would have seemed genuinely strange a decade ago to imagine a nameplate associated with Land Rover being produced by a joint venture centered on Chery's platform technology. Today, it's not strange at all. It's one of several similar arrangements that have emerged as Western manufacturers look for ways to participate meaningfully in the Chinese market, while Chinese automakers look for the brand credibility and design heritage that they haven't yet accumulated domestically. Both sides get something they need, and the resulting products are increasingly difficult to dismiss as simply rebadged Chinese vehicles with a European name attached. The level of design investment and the technical sophistication of platforms like the one underpinning the Freelander 8 have moved well beyond that. What remains genuinely uncertain is whether buyers, in China initially and internationally later, will connect with what Freelander is trying to be as a brand. A nameplate is not the same thing as a brand identity, and the work of establishing what Freelander stands for, distinct from both Land Rover and Chery, is only beginning. The Freelander 8 is a strong opening statement in terms of size, specification, and design ambition, but brand building takes time and consistency, and a single impressive product launch doesn't resolve the deeper question of whether a revived nameplate in an unfamiliar configuration can build the kind of loyalty and recognition that makes a brand sustainable over the long term. The ingredients are there. Whether they come together in the way the joint venture is hoping is something that will become clear over the next several years of real-world sales and customer experience.